I became a raging activist from having been asked. So I was part of a film team to help make a film about this remote tribal Tibetan culture on the Tibetan plateau. It's a place called Ladakh. Still
right, I know Ladakh. Yes.
but it's still very unknown, which is remarkable because it really is Tibet. And many people, it's more Tibetan than Tibet now. The Dalai Lama is the spiritual head and so on. I ended up there in 1975, just as it had opened up to the outside world. I was a linguist. At that point, I spoke about 6 or 7 languages. I was living in Paris. I was very cosmopolitan, but quite normal. Loved nature, cared about things, but I wasn't a raging activist. I discovered this remarkable, peaceful culture where the status of women was far higher than in my native Sweden. And it was because of the structures. It was because of the structures where things were closer to home and walking distance, and the household was the center of the economy. And it wasn't matriarchal, but sometimes all the land and house would be passed on to women, mostly to men. But, the balance was far better than in Sweden. It wasn't the perfect balance that you and I would dream of, but it was closer than anything I'd ever experienced. I learned to speak the language fluently. I was going to stay for 6 weeks. I ended up staying over 40 years, in the sense, for many years, I was there for half the year. And I think that's why I didn't get so massaged intellectually as my colleague. I ended up ragingly, environmental, defending cultures. We can't blame anyone for not having been aware of a machine-like.
I so agree with you. The Patrix is so powerful.
Yes.
It's so seductive. It's fabricated and based on people's trauma and fundamental belief that they are not enough.
Exactly.
And so we would do anything to get people into it. Do you know?
Yeah.
And we are so vulnerable in this regard because all of us feel like we are not enough, unless you lived in Ladakh or unless you lived in other countries that don't instill this crippling DNA,
Yeah, and don't call it DNA, because my big battle is to say, no, this is
call it capitalist DNA. I would call it capitalist injected DNA, okay?
Yeah.
So, let's put it this way, made up DNA.
Yes, pretend DNA. And it's also pretend DNA, and it's being pushed all the time. This is human nature. This is you. You love this system. You created this system.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so funny. I just did this interview with a wonderful colleague about race and what's happening, and I was talking about the same thing. Just how if there is any really central sin of morbid capitalism, it is the injection of this thing into humans that has made them believe that they are fundamentally not enough.
Exactly.
Over achieving, over producing, over consumption, over in the pursuit of finally having believed that you will have achieved enough, which of course you never do.
And the being enough is all about being loved. So we're all struggling. We all want to feel loved. We want to be respected. We want to be heard. We want to be seen. And here I lived in a culture where people surrounded the child, different age groups. Every child didn't get this, oh, you're so adorable. Oh, you're so perfect. Oh, you're so, no. But they were seen, they were heard, and they were appreciated for exactly who they were. And, I did a study with women, sort of a study, because, it ended up being, this deep experiential base over many years, not only experiencing that culture from the inside, but seeing step by step, literally along one road, like a little scientific experiment, the way that the system injected people. And schooling is one of them. And this is one of the really difficult things, And the school books, you wouldn't believe, in India and China right now, and they're locking these 4-year-olds into cement boxes without windows. They have to have thick glasses by the time they're 4, and they're made to rote memorize English and told, oh yeah, my name is Chuing Lee, but call me Mary. They're adopting English names.
Exactly.
It's like, and so having had that, experience of I'm fine just the way I am. I was going to tell you, when I did this study with women, I asked them, roughly when the children start walking, and don't you worry if they're not walking by one. And it was so funny because they could not understand my question. I had to repeat it 3 times. They say, worried? They're going to walk at some point. It's like, and then I was contrasting that with, people in the West with their baby in the womb doing measurements, worried about getting them into the right school.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But also, and other things I'm saying, Eve, is that we have never studied healthy culture. So everything from Freud is based on completely false assumptions. He's studying neurotic people, driven away from community, driven away from the land, and it's already embedded in this patriarchal system.
I was thinking about 5 years ago, I moved here to this very small community after living in the city for 40 years. And it's so right size, and it's so bite size, and it's so adorable, this community, and I love it so much. And I love the land so much, and I love every single tree on the land. And I think I was thinking today about what the difference between local and general is, right? And I was thinking, I always see everything through the prism of the vagina or sex, right? And so this is how I would say, if you really want to please a vagina, the last thing you want to do is go fast and be general. What you want to do is go slow and be local. Because if you do that, you will take a woman where she needs to go, right? And I feel it's really kind of the metaphor of the whole world, right? Like, go slow and be specific. Go slow and be local. Know where you are. Know where you are, and know where the spot is that needs to be tended to, And I think for me, and I'll just share this, because I grew up in a very patriarchal, violent family with a predator and an abuser as a father, at a young age, I was sexually abused and violently abused, and so I left my body. And leaving my body, I was very much a object of my life, not a subject of my life. I divorced myself from nature because nature was too much a reminder of the life and the body I had left. Because when you leave your own body, you leave the body of the world and you leave the body of nature. And I went to the cities where everything was fast and general and big, go big or don't go at all. And it was all about achieving and getting and amounting to something and proving I wasn't that stupid, horrible, jackass that my father called me my whole life. And fortunately, 10 years ago, in that time, I had a life, and there were wonderful things about that life. I got to write and I got to create, and I wrote plays that mattered to me and clearly mattered to other women and people. But you know what? All that time, I was under I was under the patrix. I was under the pressure and the momentum and the push and the of a force that was not my own. And eventually I got very, very sick. 10 years ago, I had stage 3/4 uterine cancer, where I had a tumor the size of an avocado in my uterus that I didn't even know was there, because I was moving and I was on the move and I was working and I was doing and I was achieving and I didn't even know what my body was feeling because I wasn't in my body. And that was the greatest blessing of my life, that illness, because I woke up after 9 hours of surgery with 7 organs gone and 70 nodes. And I had tubes and bags coming out of every part of my body. But you know what? I was a body. I was in my body. I was a body. And it was unbelievable. It was a mystical experience. And through that time that I was sick and I went through infections and chemo and all kinds of, I fell in love with the earth. I came into my body. Through using chemo as a shamanic experience, I burned away all the demons that needed to be burned away. And I knew at the end of that, I could never live in the city again. I moved to the trees. I moved to the country. I was in my body, and I had to be connected to the earth because when you're in your body, you have to be connected to the earth. And I think what capitalist, racist patriarchy has done intentionally is remove women, remove men from their bodies. And as once you are removed from your body, they can do whatever they want to you. They can do, because you're removed from nature. And when you're removed from nature, you're removed from the source, and you're removed from the mother, and you're removed from the beginning, and you're removed from your heart, and you're removed from your soul, and you're removed from wonder, and you're removed from magic, and you're removed from the stars, and you're removed from everything that would guide you or teach you or instruct you or lift you. You're removed from the divine. And so I feel so blessed, to be local, to be local, to be located. Because to me, that's what local means. It means to be located somewhere, to be located in my body, located in the earth, located in a community, to be here, to not be rushing through or passing through or on my way to the next, but to be here. I cannot believe that I got this to happen in this lifetime. I'm so grateful. And really and truly, I want this for every person on the planet. I want it for every person to know what this feels like, to know what this life feels like, the difference of this life,
Yeah, and because also from my perspective, what I've seen, what I've witnessed, is as people are driven away from the earth into an urban prison based on lots of so-called cheap fossil fuels, the fear of survival, the fear of now having this technology of money, which you don't know if tomorrow the bread is going to cost twice as much. So you neurotically hoard that, and you are suddenly pitted against others because you've been brought into an environment where far away forces and institutions are extracting profit. And suddenly, what I've seen in Bhutan, Buddhists and Hindus, in Ladakh, Buddhists and Muslims, all over the world, Christians and foreigners, there is this battle which often leads to extermination, and it also leads, by the way, to people driving up their numbers in order to have a vote in the modern urban economy. They actually consciously stop practices that kept population down because they need the numbers, because they want to have the Buddhists in charge or the Hindus in charge, because then they will get the jobs. So we've created this artificial scarcity, and we've created a situation because, like you said, because we're so removed from the divine, we are so frail, we're so fragile, we can so easily be manipulated. We're so powerless.
And controlled. I think the further we remove from ourselves and we are removed from our bodies in the land, the more easily we are controlled. Your body is your life force. The earth is the life force. When you're connected to that life force, you're connected to your knowledge, your wisdom, your power, your rebellious, revolutionary spirit. When that is taken away from you, you lose your footing, literally. You lose your footing. And once you lose your footing, you've been destabilized, and you can be owned and you can be taken. And that's what the Patrix, that's what it does. That's what it does.
And now, as you speak about spirituality in this way, you're speaking in the way that I discovered these ancient indigenous cultures experience spirituality. It was embodied, it was grounded, it was whole. Spirituality wasn't some serious thing you do on Sundays, or you're meditating and no children around, no life around, no animals. It was integrated, it was part of the whole. And that embodied spirituality I see as one of many of what I call ancient futurist trends, that without knowing it, we're recovering the ancient wisdom of earth and community-based culture. And they were localized. And, I'm also, I'm trying to say that every business needs to be place-based. Every business needs to belong to a place and adhere to the rules of that place. So even as we move forward, and we'll want some technology for sure, but we've got to be really careful that that technology is adapted to the human and ecological needs and to the human and ecological priorities. So business will be shaped by that. What we have right now in the Patrix, as you call it, which I love, is a system where business is shaping the entire cultural pattern around the world towards a consumer monoculture, and it's threatening Gaia herself. So we have this enormous system now, literally dominated by algorithms. And so I so hope, Eve, that we can work together.
I'd love to. I want to also tell you, because it's very connected to this, we have a lot of amazing projects in V-Day and OBR, but one of my favorite things ever that we've done is this incredible place in the Congo called the City of Joy. And to me, it's a perfect example of what happens when things become localized. Because I was invited to the Congo maybe 10 years ago by an amazing man named Dr. Denis Mukwege, who won the Nobel Peace Prize 2 years ago. And where all the horrible sexual terrorism and rapes of women in the Congo were going on, he asked me to come to draw attention and to help him really get the word out about what was happening. He was a gynecologist who was literally sewing up the vaginas of women as fast as the militias were tearing them apart. It's an economic war fought over coltan, which goes into our computers. Women's bodies are literally sacrificed and destroyed in order for multinationals to reap these minerals from the ground. And where rape is used as a tactic of incredible economic war. And I was invited there and then met this amazing woman named Christine Schuler-Descriver, who became my partner and my sister. And I think 8 years ago, we opened up this amazing place called the City of Joy, which really, the idea of it was to create a place where survivors of the worst violence would come, they would heal, they would be educated, they would learn their rights, and they would become leaders. And over the course of a few years, we were able to buy 350 hectares of land, which has now become, we turn pain to power and we turn pain to planting. So the whole idea is for people who've been traumatized is to work with the land to begin to heal what's been done to them, as well as working in groups and learning their rights. And what's happened in this place is so magical and so beautiful. And it's only run by Congolese. It's only determined by Congolese. It's only, and what it's done to the community, how it's changed the community around it, how it's reshaped the community around it, because it is so, the practices are indigenous, the vision is indigenous. What happens there is based on music and dance and theater and life force that is unequivocated and just given total permission to be at the foundation of what is healing and what is transformative. And because we were able to initiate this project, we were able to say, let's do what we believe. Let's really go for it. Let's take our basic soulful principles of life and introduce them into this project. And it's really taught me that if you build something and create something with the people who live on the land, in the land, with the land, they know exactly what they need to do. They don't need instruction. They know exactly what they need to do. They just need the resources to do it.
But I want to add to that, because I would say this is where our work is also, not so well understood, because, and this is why what you'll be on is this World Localization Day. So this is the great paradox for us, which is that what I discovered is that the most remote people in my experience, and I'm talking about very remote, like nomads up on the Tibetan plateau, those are the most vulnerable today, because they are being, they're getting this huge weight of real, intellectual pollution that is so massive. So now they will say, we are backward as animals, we're no one. Please give some money so we can send our children to school so they can go to the city and get a job. So here we have this situation where actually in this ancient futures trend, what I'm seeing is that many people like you're an example of this, who lived that life in that city. And yeah, there was some fun and so, but you came to realize how empty it was, how profoundly empty it was. You developed a longing for nature, for reconnection to life. Community, human life, very important, and the rest of life where we feel, as you said, that spiritual connection. So this is a trend, and I'm seeing it coming even out of Beijing, out of a relatively short time. I'm seeing it coming out of Delhi and Mumbai, and it's come more out of the industrialized world. And what I'm seeing is that because we're all of us facing this enormous weight of this make-believe money, it has no real power, an algorithm on a daily basis determining the price of our water, of our bread, of everything. We need to come together. So the paradox is that very often projects like that City of Joy will have been supported and initiated by someone coming out of the urban, and that we should be looking at what are we doing? Are we helping one another to move back towards life, to the only and the real economy? Are we going to wake up to the fact that if we're not on that journey and doing everything we can to support it, every single day we're extinguishing the real economy and we're extinguishing the people. It's so heartbreaking. So for instance, with the story you just tell now, the City of Joy, is very similar to what Joanna Hari tells about a story in England where the therapist realized there's a very fundamental importance of people coming together in community, like Alcoholics Anonymous.
The wonderful story he tells in his book. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and that is then about them coming together in the community and to the land. And you see, they weren't necessarily of that place. But so this is also, for me, very important to show that even within the city, we can start taking those steps.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Because and what we're seeing now with COVID, is this huge opportunity, and we're seeing how polluting and how with pandemic illness we don't want to be in the city. So hopefully we're going to start this movement out. Now, what do you say? Between us, I'm told that, I'm not just told, I'm picking up all the time, but most people feel no point trying to, as it were, fight the system. I'm not actually talking about fighting the system, but I'm talking about what I call big picture activism. And that big picture includes, from my point of view, clarity about why we need to really wake up to multiple ways that we might be feeding the patriots with various habits, various ideas. For instance, I want to help people in the Congo with a new school, which is actually a ticket to the city, to unemployment. How do we change education? What can we support? Do we talk about changing the dominant system? Do we talk about, for me, what happened is in about the 80s, I met someone from Malaysia who opened my eyes to the fact that these trade treaties were going on. And that for me was like a huge relief, because I'd been ranting about this Western system coming in everywhere and how even in Sweden it was making things work. And now suddenly I saw there was a very specific path, there was a thread where these specific negotiations were giving banks and corporations more and more power over our government. Do you know that right now they're signing ISDS clauses? Do you know they're literally black and white saying, if we do anything to reduce your profit-making potential, you can take us to court. And these are kangaroo court. So for me, I don't know. I feel the big picture needs to now say very clearly, beware, that path right now is through trade treaties, and it's particularly now through the new arrangements with high-tech global industries. Bezos is slated now to be the first trillionaire.
I know.
What do you say? Would you say, like on this day, World Localization Day, we're planning to celebrate localization, but we will have bits in there to try to create that clarity, so that I'm just seeing, particularly, what's particularly difficult is that in the sort of new economy movement, there are lots of men who are now very critical of the neoliberal patriarchal system, but very few of them have that awakening to body, spirit, and earth. And I see around the world, this localization movement is absolutely led by women.
Absolutely, because it's
everywhere.
embodied. It's embodied.
Yeah.
I think if I look at what's going on in City of Joy, it's such a total example to me of it's woman-led, it's women-determined, it's coming literally from women's bodies and women's innate kind of embodied understanding of the connection to the earth. That is what is informing everything. And I think, to be honest with you, it's the only thing I trust right now. It's when things happen from people who are indigenous to that place, who know what to do, who have given the resources to follow their instincts, to actually create life, sustain life, enjoy life, deepen life, right? And it's so funny, if I look at the evolution of City of Joy, it's really the evolution of stages of pleasure, right? It's like we are, women come there for 6 months, they get everything paid, they get healed, they get social workers, they get fed well, they get massaged, they get healed by each other, by the staff, by the mamas, by the world. But every time I go back, they now have a hut, which is this beautiful wellness hut where the social workers come. Now they have nutritional classes. And it's all evolving out of what do we need for the next stages of our healing? Because here's the deal. Everyone on this planet is traumatized. Everyone. Until we begin to heal the traumas, there is no building of a new world. We will just repeat and repeat. So when we are talking about any formation or any creation of anything local, it must have built into it the healing of trauma. And so we started out intentionally saying we will only accept women here who have been sexually abused, which of course is every woman in the Congo and every woman in the world on some level, right? Because whether you've been abused yourself or you've witnessed or it could happen or you almost had it happen, you're still part of that. System of trauma. And I think as you begin to heal, you will know through the process of healing what the next stage and what the next thing you need to do to go deeper into your healing, and your healing will then become the remaking of the world. It is one and the same. It is one and the same.
Also, what I guess where I would, right now, I have to almost agree that everyone is traumatized. But of course, when I arrived in Ladakh, those people, absolutely, there was suicide was one in a lifetime. Depression, when I tried to talk.
Ladakh, maybe not.
Sorry?
When I was, maybe not Ladakh, but I was in Tibet.
Yeah.
People traumatized in the back.
Yeah. I don't know how important it is, I guess. I'm not sure how important it is. It feels to me important to know that trauma is not inherently, part of the human DNA.
It isn't a part of our DNA. We're not born traumatized.
No.
We are born into world systems that are based on domination, invasion, and violence is the methodology that sustains those systems. So you have to punish a child, you have to beat down a person, you have to, like, racism, sexism, and capitalism are these three-headed monsters that keep everything in its place, right?
Although I see in my experience, it makes it very difficult. I remember Eve Ensler.
I know Rianne.
Rianne. So when we were together, this is like back in the 70s or something. I haven't really seen her since, but she was pretty, she was adamant that my story of Ladakh couldn't be true because from her point of view, we have to go back to prehistory to find something where this trauma wasn't, and the patriarchy wasn't so dominant. But you see, again, then I agree, I think, with the analysis that says we have to go back to prehistory to find, the perfect balance. But what I'm trying to raise awareness about is is the degree to which these people's balance was infinitely greater
Oh,
than
I
anything we
completely
had.
believe
Yeah.
that.
When I would try to explain about depression, so what I discovered over the years, again, starting with that child, feeling fine exactly the way you are.
Mhm.
And that meant also, if someone had some problem, or if there were, if someone was blind, there was no pretense, oh, you're exactly like us, and that's why we accept you. We have this inverse racism, where we have to prove that everybody's exactly like us, otherwise they're no good. So everyone was included. And I think, anyway, I just discovered the most remarkable lightness of being, the most remarkable sort of just vital joy, really active joy. Sense
You will
of
find
humor.
that at City of Joy too. It's the
Sorry?
most joyful. City of Joy is the most
Yeah,
joyful place I've ever
yeah.
been.
And
It's
isn't that so wonderful? What you're describing is something that has come, that is out of the healing. And to me, that is the most important. And I don't know, and it's because sometimes when I do try to defend the traditional way of being, I end up alienating so many Westerners who are convinced that, like I say, you have to go to prehistory or.
No, I don't believe any of that. I believe there must be communities, and there are communities that have,
good.
No,
Good.
yeah.
Because another thing that I discovered, is that from everything I know, virtually every single earth-based, community-based culture, singing, chanting, making music, dancing, was just, everybody did it. The one-year-old child.
Do you know what 1 Billion Rising is? 1 Billion Rising is this worldwide campaign based on dance, right?
Yeah. Oh, no, I didn't know it's based on dance. I thought it was just 1 billion women rising.
No, it's a dance movement. It's that once a year, or now it's all the time, you go and you dance to call up what you want to change. And so it's millions of women, millions of women all over the world dance and dance and dance to call up change. Because the women of Congo taught me that dance is the core, primary, transformative tool. And it's also so collective and so free.
Exactly.
And so it's the most brilliant thing ever.
Yeah. But if you haven't done it, I grew up like most Westerners. My father probably I think laughed at me when I was dancing and singing, and he liked the painting, so I ended up just doing paintings. But anyway, when I was 60, I decided, no, I'm not going to just mouth words. I am going to sing, because one of the lessons too was that you sing together. And if you haven't started doing that yourself, I would urge you, because I think there's something even more magical with the singing, because as you sing in group, participatory, it's not me up on the stage and someone spectating.
Right.
No spectator, just group singing is like the experience of oneness. It's almost like when you're under the stars. Did you grow up singing? Because most Westerners think they can't sing. 90% we told we can't.
You know what? I grew up singing, but thinking I couldn't sing.
Okay. Love you. So you want to be called B?
I changed my name. It's V.
To V. Yeah. V for victory, vagina, both.
Vagina, vulva, vulnerable. All the great V words.
Okay. V. Love you. Thank you so much. It's lovely to meet you.
Wonderful to meet you. Yeah. Wonderful. Okay.
Bye.
Be well.
You too.